Alright guys, how about a late evening ride on the Harley Davidson? I haven't ridden her today, and it was super hot today. And now it's cooling down, the sun's starting to go down. Well, the sun's pretty much completely down at this point. Let me tell you, up here in the mountains of Colorado, it cools off pretty fast. Let me see if I can turn the key on, turn the ignition on. Start her up. Oh yeah. So this should be interesting. I actually just put these LED lights on this bike as one of the upgrades. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes out on the video and how well it lights up the road here. Coming up my driveway away from my house. This crazy driveway with the ruts and everything. It's good practice. And then all these potholes down this dirt road. Alright, here we go. Ooh, yeah, it's definitely cooled off, that's for sure. It's a little bit chilly. I think I checked the temperature. It looked like it was about 66 degrees. And let me tell you, maybe about 2 hours ago, it was like 83 degrees. So by the time we come back, it could be down in the 50s, and tonight it'll probably get down in the 40s, which is kind of crazy. I actually put on my heated vest. Now let me tell you, if you haven't used a heated vest before, they are pretty amazing. It's almost like just a regular fleece vest. You can't even tell the difference between the heated vest and a regular fleece vest. And then you just throw a battery in the pocket of the vest, and if you get cold, you just hit the button on your vest once, and if you get really cold, you can hit it twice or 3 times. And let me tell you, if you put the vest on high, it gets really super hot. You can pretty much manage any cold situation on a motorcycle with a heated vest for the most part. I do have a full body jumpsuit if it gets really super cold, like down in the low 30s. I've actually drove once before when it was 34 and I put my jumpsuit on and the heated vest. But I took my leather jacket off and I was still pretty toasty. The only time I got really cold, well, I wouldn't say really cold, but kind of uncomfortable, is when I was driving through a few hours of rain with my rain jacket, my jumpsuit, and my heated vest on, and it seemed like the rain worked its way through the front seam of my rain gear. I actually have it's called the Frog Togs rain gear. That's like the really cheap one. It's I think I paid like $40 for the set. It's like $20 for the top, $20 for the bottom, but it works pretty good. It's pretty amazing quality for just a $40 rain suit. And as a matter of fact, if you actually look at some of the high-end rain suits, even the really high-end ones, they all kind of have that complaint where they leak in the front and you end up with kind of a wet crotch with your rain suit. So, I was reading the reviews on Amazon on the real expensive ones and the real cheap one. And a lot of people went with the cheap one because you pretty much have the same problem. If I can get through those potholes and the sand on the road and everything. So this is kind of you have to really be careful at this time, because this is when a lot of the deer and everything come out. Usually at dusk and dawn, you get a high amount of wildlife activity. And the other thing, I actually have this helmet that I'm wearing. It's a Shoei RF 1200. It's a really expensive helmet. I bought it on eBay as an open box special for, I think it was almost a little over half price, but brand new they're like $500 or something like that, which is kind of crazy. And these Shoei helmets, they come with a pin lock on the visor, which is like a little piece of plastic that goes on the inside that pretty much eliminates all the condensation. So if you breathe inside the helmet, it doesn't fog up because of the pin lock. It's like a double layer that snaps in front of the visor. And they always warn against wearing the pin lock at night. They said, do not wear the pin lock at night. And I thought, well, why shouldn't I? Because it works really good for, you know, especially at night. You're breathing at night and it's like fogging up your visor. And the problem is when you have cars coming head on, you get a lot of glare from that pin lock. That really kind of glares out your whole visor, and it's kind of hard to see because it streaks all the lights. But it's only when the cars are coming like straight at you. All right, so this is kind of tricky here with all the sand and the pothole. Looks like it's clear. So kind of the cool thing about riding in adverse conditions, like when it gets colder at night, or you know, when it's like when it's like 40 degrees out, pretty much the cool thing is when I bring my motorcycle out, I am the only motorcycle on the road. You know, you come out when it's really nice and everyone's got their bike, you know, riding around, and then, you know, you gear up and you ride when it's like 40, even in the low 50s, and you'll almost never see motorcycles out. If you're driving in the rain, everyone thinks you're crazy because even if it's raining a little bit, it's funny, there's like no motorcycles on the road at all. And this late in the evening, there's not that many cars either, which is kind of cool. You almost have the whole road to yourself. You can probably tell by my voice that this road is really super bumpy. This is the one I practice on pretty much every day, coming out here and going up and down the strip by the cows. So I don't know if you noticed in my last video, but I really kind of tweaked the audio on these recordings, and I made my audio pretty good. And then it was kind of weird. I went into Adobe Premiere Pro and added a 10-band equalizer, and I was able to even make my voice sound a little bit better, and I could bring up the bass to where you could hear pretty much exactly what this bike sounds like. So when I'm like giving it gas like that, I can bring it up in the with the EQ and make it sound almost exactly like it sounds here driving the bike. It has this really deep rumble to it, which is one of the things I love about this bike. Another thing I was kind of thinking about this bike, I was wondering if there's any way, you know, it seems like the suspension is really rough, especially in the front on this bike. Of course, this bike is kind of raked out on the front end, so it's almost like almost has like a chopper look to it. We have a longer degree angle in the front, where the front tire is further out than normal. But I was wondering if you could replace the front forks with something that's, you know, a lot smoother, that would absorb these bumps a lot better. Wow, I just came around that corner and it's like at least 10 degrees colder right here. This really, it's almost like a cold wall that I just ran into. That is pretty wild. And it's still really cold right here, which is pretty wild. It was like down in that valley, it was like 10 degrees warmer. It's usually colder down in that valley, which is kind of surprising. And oh, right here, just switched, now it's warm again. That's weird. That is really weird. It's weird, just all the smells and the temperatures and everything, you can really feel them exaggerated on a motorcycle. Especially the heat and the cold. And sometimes I'll go around a corner, especially like in the middle of the day, and I don't know if it's the sun hitting certain rocks or like a cliff or something against the wall, just how everything is like rock, or, you know, pavement on rock, and the wind's really still. But sometimes I'll go around a corner and it'll be like 20 degrees hotter in one little spot. It's like I hit one little tiny spot of really hot air going around a corner, which is pretty wild. And I'm sure in a car you definitely don't even know it's there, because you're just kind of blazing right through it. So yeah, I was kind of wondering how this windshield would work at night, and so far, you know, I can actually see right over the windshield, which is just perfect. So the windshield's pretty much cutting the road right in half as far as my field of view. I actually have another windshield that's 2 inches taller, and let me tell you, that was like right in my field of view, the top of the windshield, which was, it was absolutely awful. And then I switched to this windshield. As a matter of fact, there's still a little adjustment right on the bottom where I could bring the windshield down even further if I wanted to and bring it down. Although I think it looks pretty cool there. It's just about as high as the handlebars, which is, it's weird. These handlebars, they're like ape hangers. You know, when I bought this bike, it was kind of funny. I bought it online in a place in Wisconsin. And when I bought the bike, the ape hangers were like really super high. They were like kind of sticking way out. It was almost unrideable the way it was. And they actually brought the bike into, I had it delivered to a local Harley Davidson dealer. And the funny thing is when I brought it to the dealer, they thought it was one of their auction bikes. So they started working on it and tearing it apart. And actually it was like, where's my bike? He's like, oh, the guy thought it was his and he's working on it. So I walk in and they had the whole thing all torn apart, and they said, yeah, the battery's dead, and they readjusted the handlebars back to this position, which is really, really comfortable for me. It's like the perfect position as far as kind of being like the lounge chair position of the whole setup on this motorcycle. I actually had someone sit on my bike that was shorter than I am, so I'm actually 6'4" so I'm really tall. And the funny thing is this fits me perfectly as far as leaning back on my sissy bar bags and grabbing the handlebars. And I had someone sit on here that was 6'1", and they didn't fit on here. It was amazing, just a few inches. They didn't have the arm span to reach from, you know, leaning back on the sissy bar bags all the way to the handlebars. So it almost seems like this bike is, you know, dialed into a 6'4" person. I would say probably most people can't ride this bike without modifying it. And then if you actually sit up and don't lean back, then it feels weird having the handlebars kind of back in your lap like this, which is, it's kind of a weird setup. I've never really seen a bike that has, you know, handlebars or like ape hangers laid over and set up to where it's like a kind of like a lounge chair. See if I can negotiate this corner without wiping out in the gravel. Since there's no cars around, I'm gonna take that one wide, but there's so much gravel on that corner. It's pretty crazy. All right, so this is the halfway point. This is where I usually gas up, or, you know, get a little one of those Starbucks Frappuccinos, or get a little candy bar or something. But for now, we're just gonna blow right by. So yeah, the hardest thing up here, especially at night, is you really can't see a lot of the sand and the gravel on the corners very well. So I'm always like really cautious. I definitely don't want to lay the bike down slipping, especially like right there. There's like a whole bunch of sand right there, which kind of freaks me out. So you can probably hear that rumble. Rumbling through the neighborhood here, waking up the dead. This thing is really loud. So yeah, you can definitely tell that the lights are starting to kick in a little bit. I don't know how it's going to look on the video. I don't know how this is actually an Osmo action cam that I'm using to record this. And if you actually compare the Osmo to the GoPros, the Osmo, I would say it doesn't have as many features, but it's a lot more stable as far as the reliability of the recording. As far as, you know, recording with sound, I've seen a lot. As a matter of fact, I was actually watching some guy do a motorcycle vlog today on a GoPro, and he's like, yeah, I'm having SD cards and having to keep formatting my SD cards, and then I'll get videos without sounds. And let me tell you, that is not your SD card. That is the GoPro. The GoPros are pretty infamous for having problems like that. So that's one of the reasons I went with the Osmo Action. Although I think the GoPro might be a little better in low light than the Osmo. So there's kind of pros and cons to each one. And the other thing I like about the Osmo, speaking of action cameras, is this one is a lot smaller, especially compared to like the new GoPros. The new GoPros are probably like twice as big is this Osmo Action, which you know, I really don't want a camera that big on my chin. I wish I had a gear indicator on this bike. I can't tell if I'm in second or if I'm in third. I think this is third. Yeah, I think this is third. I usually cruise about 35 in third gear through here. I don't know why, but you know, I've only been riding this bike for like 2 months and I'm still really nervous about hitting sand around the corners and losing traction. That's one of the things that kind of really freaks me out still. It's just like I just don't have the confidence to take the corners and know that my tires are gonna slide on the sand and the gravel when I come around, especially at night when I really can't see, you know, is that just a shadow in the road or is that really a lot of sand and some gravel on the road, because everything's really super sandy up here. Although I've been driving this back and forth every single day, I should know by now what's sand and what's gravel and where the potholes are and the names of all the deer as I pass them on the side of the road. That seems like, you know, even the deer are really predictable. They're like always in the same place, in the same part of the road, which is kind of crazy. I don't know if you saw my phone here. Isn't that awesome? That app where you can actually see my speed limit and the maximum speed and the mileage, the distance and everything. That's pretty awesome. It was one of the few apps I paid for. I downloaded that app because I thought it looked cool on this bike, and then the ads started popping up, so I think I spent like $3 to get the ads off of it. And then so now I use it without the ads, and it's so much better having a really big, cool looking, like retro looking speedometer. It just kind of goes with this bike because it kind of has a really unique, kind of almost like a retro chopper look to this bike, and I thought it just really went well with this bike. So I think it was well worth the $3, and I use it all the time. The other thing that I found on this bike, I just went back into the 10-degree colder zone right through here, which is kind of wild. Just like, it's funny, it just hit this, it's almost like a blanket. It just like instantly switches. Here it's even colder. Wow. It's like probably 15 degrees colder here, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, so when I first started riding, it was funny. I jumped on this bike, didn't really know, and had no clue about, the fear factor and the highway speeds and anything like that. And the first thing I did is, well, as a matter of fact, my very first ride, I can tell you about that. That was crazy. So I had the bike in my garage all winter, and I was just like dying to ride my bike because it was in the garage. So I got a little bit antsy and took it out probably sooner than I should have. So I brought my bike out when there was still snow at the foot of the driveway. I'm gonna speed up a little bit here. And on my very first ride, I actually got stuck in the snow on the bottom of my driveway, right in front of my garage. I was like stuck there for like 5 minutes, and it was then that I realized this bike is really super heavy, and it felt really top heavy, and I thought for sure I was gonna drop it. I was like freaking out. So then after about 5 minutes, I finally got it through the snow at the bottom of the driveway. And I started coming up my driveway, and I found out that it was like sinking in the mud and getting thrown side by side from all the ruts and everything. And then I had no clue because I haven't driven a motorcycle in like 20 years. And then I got to the gravel roads, and I realized the suspension was really bad. My teeth were chattering really bad. And then I actually did a couple fixes on the suspension, which makes it quite a bit better than when I first started out. And then I hit the paved roads, and then I realized the whole thing with the gravel, which I had never even noticed before until I had a motorcycle, and realized I could potentially slip on the gravel which was kind of crazy. So I was like, you know, by the time I got to like the loaf and jug, I was like sweating. I was like so terrified of what was going on with this bike and getting stuck, and you know, potentially sliding in the gravel and everything. So then I actually decided to go on the highway. I went on the highway. I had no ear protection. Let me tell you, you definitely want ear protection. I got on the highway with no windshield, and I had my helmet on with no earplugs, and it was deafening. It was so loud from the wind noise that it was almost making me deaf. As a matter of fact, after that ride, it felt like I had cotton balls in my ear. I think I had some permanent hearing loss from my first trip on my motorcycle. So let me tell you, I had a lot of things to fix on the bike and a lot of things to learn about riding this crazy bike. So one of the first things I did as far as the suspension is I changed the back shocks. I actually upgraded to the cheapest progressive shocks. They're about $300, and I'm kind of regretting that purchase because I'd say they were a little bit better. They were noticeably better, but my rear suspension, I'd say it's still more bouncy than it should be. You know, a lot of people go to the $1,000 Legends where you can get the $1,000 shocks. That's like the ultimate. And then my front forks, I actually had my fork seals were leaking really bad. Every time I go on a ride, to go around that sand there in that corner, every time I go on a ride, I get all this oil coming up from my fork seals all over. So I thought, you know, I bet those forks are completely empty when it comes to the fork seals. So I brought it into the shop and had it fixed, and sure enough, it really improved the front end. As far as the handling, it's significantly better, although it's still pretty rough when I am driving, especially on this dirt road coming up over here. It's pretty crazy. I thought for sure this bike would be a lot smoother than it actually is. Look at that, you can probably see those potholes really good right now. This is kind of an interesting light coming from my headlight. I actually got this headlight on eBay. It was a copy of, I think it's called a Daymaker. The Daymakers are like, I think they're like $350 or something. This was like the eBay copy. I think I paid like $50 for this headlight. And the headlight that I had in it was one of the yellow ones that comes with the motorcycle. Just the regular halogen headlights that you really can't see very much. This is definitely better than what comes stock on these old 2007 Harley Davidson Dyna Street Bobs. That's what this is. So it was definitely a significant improvement as far as the light. And I kind of like how it kind of spreads across. I wish it was more dispersed, but this is better than some that I've seen. Some that I've seen have been really like choppy, where you see like spots instead of more of a consistent light through the whole thing. And this does have a high beam. The high beam's not that impressive. That's low beam, that's high beam, that's low beam. And the funny thing is, when I first got this bike, I was going from high beam to low beam, and I think my switches had a lot of corrosion in, and every now and then I would lose my lights, and I'd have no headlight driving around at night. I was like, all right, I'm not going to switch from high beam to low beam. And then when I got home, I kind of worked the switch back and forth quite a few times, and it seems like it kind of solved all the corrosion. So this, right here, this road coming down, you have to really be careful, because it's like a blind spot. People come flying down that road. I've almost gotten into accidents there quite a few times. So we'll go back to high beam. Not that it really makes that much of a difference, but it does give you a little bit more light. Alright, let's see here. Look at this. You can probably see really good how bad my driveway is now. It's just like you're going around ruts and everything, trying to figure out where to put your tire because it's just so bad. You definitely can't do this one-handed down this driveway. And then look at how sloped it is right here. It goes up and down and all over. And then from here, I could do one hand and open the garage door. Boy, it got dark quick. It's actually really nice out. It's pretty perfect for driving a motorcycle. Alright, so we are back in the man cave in the garage. Alright, so there you have it. That is our first night ride. Pretty awesome. It's pretty amazing how the temperature changed from one place to another. That was still quite surprising. Tonight it seemed like it was even more amplified than I've ever seen it. Alright, so I'm going to turn this off. So I turn the ignition off here. And check this out. I actually have a little thing here that shows my voltage on my battery. That's 13 volts. And that actually comes up here, plugs in my phone, and charges my phone. How awesome is that? That's pretty cool, huh? All right, guys. Thanks for watching. And I will catch you in the next video.